Okay people, so welcome to another day and another video. So this week's another 700 diesel Arctic Cat. It's occurred to me in the previous episodes on the red Arctic Cat diesel that I didn't really explain that much about them. They're fairly rare, but not as rare in the UK as in the US. They're based on a standard petrol Arctic Cat platform, but we didn't get hardly any of the petrol Arctic Cats in the UK. We only really got the diesel Arctic Cat. There's not a few floating about like the 550XR that we did recently, but there's really not many petrol Arctic Cats. So it uses a 700cc twin-cylinder Lombardini engine, which is now a Kohler engine essentially. It's a very unusual engine for a quad. It's got basically every difference from a regular bike. So it uses a timing belt instead of a timing chain. It's got a proper car style alternator on it, and water pump and all the accessories you'd expect from a vehicle. It's got a separate gearbox, obviously they're normally in one piece. It really is a very one-off and unique machine. The engine is now owned by Kohler, so you can get all the parts from Kohler as well as the Lombardini original supplier. They're basically the same engine. So yeah, they really are quite interesting. They're about as big as a bike can get in the UK. And usually they don't have a wet clutch. They actually have the CVT, primary CVT, directly on the crankshaft, which is very unusual. So this particular one, let's just squeeze past the KLF. This particular one I paid quite a pretty penny for. I paid about 4 times more than I paid for that. But in theory, that's because it's in significantly better condition than that. Obviously, that required a full engine rebuild, full everything rebuild, basically. We spent £2,000 in parts on that one. But hopefully this one will require a fraction amount of the work. They made these from 2007 to 2015. My personal preference is the older ones, because up until 2009, they came with this much chunkier bull bar on the front. EU legislation changed around 2009 and they came with a bull bar that only dipped below the headlights, which is obviously much worse. You can upgrade the later models to have this bull bar. The later models did come with a road legal kit if you wanted to register them, which was nice. But this particular machine is quite good. It's got good BKT wing tyres on the front, and I think it's got, is it BKT wings on the back? I think there's a Kenda Bear claws on the back, which also have good tread. It's a good runner. Run starts fairly well. It's got the common Arctic Cat problems in that the front suspension needs going through. It needs both ball joints. It needs shock bushes lower, A-arm bushes. I've had all them delivered to yesterday. There's about £400 worth of bushes in here because there's all the bushes and bearings for this, and also for the 300 Arctic Cat. So we've got these are A-arm bushes, ball joints. It also needs a couple of wheel bearings on the back, which we've got here. The other problem it has is that it has some belt slip. Normally I would worry about that and think it's wet clutch, but as I've mentioned earlier, these don't have a wet clutch. So it's guaranteed to be the belt. There's pretty much nothing else it can be. So I've got a brand new CV Tech belt here. It's an old stock one, so it's a bit tarnished, but it is a brand new CV Tech belt. That was about £100 in itself. It's the OEM, which is all good. We're doing an oil change on it right now. We've got a man filter for it here, which are quite good filters for these 700 diesels. Somebody has had the sense to put a bolt drain plug in it rather than the hex heads that it comes with originally. So that's not going to round off for you, which is good. Well done to whoever did that. It's also magnetic. We're going to sandblast all the racks on it and powder coat, well, not either powder coat them or paint them, and they'll end up like this 700D, significantly better. The seat appears to have a rip in it, but it's had this cover put on, so I'm not sure whether I'm going to remove the cover and actually recover the seat, or whether I'm just going to staple this cover, because the cover actually looks quite nice, so I may use that. So yeah, I'll drain the oil out of it now. The oil filter location on them, if we lift up the seat, come on. It's a bit of a funny bike to do much work on, the access. The oil filter is just down there, and the dipstick is actually accessible through the top there. The radiator's here. So I'm going to fill it up with oil now. I'll jack the front suspension up, and I'll show you exactly what it needs. Okay, well I know I said the next clip would be the front suspension, but it has occurred to me that I haven't got any grinding discs, and my method of removing the ball joints is to cut the top off them. So I'm going to get some tomorrow, but there's plenty of other work to do. I'm filling the oil, as I say, right now. You can use your standard motor oil rather than wet clutch safe, because it doesn't have a wet clutch. I might go to this semi-synthetic 10W40. So I'm going to fill it up now. I've got my special 700 diesel funnel, because the filler is right down there on the rocker cover. And then it's got a completely dead battery, so we'll be replacing that so we can start her up and circulate the oil through. The battery I've got is a Numax. It's quite a decent battery. They're massive on these, so they are quite expensive. This is about, I think it was about £80. There it is, so I'll be fitting that in a moment. And the next clip you'll see will be it running, I guess. Okay, she's running, and she sounds sweet as it should. It did take a little bit to crank over. It may benefit from a new set of glow plugs, but it runs fine. There's no knocking or anything like that other one. It's pretty clean exhaust. So clean you can't even see it on film. I'll show you it start up now. Should start up straight away from warm. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with this engine. It's really quite a good one. She's got 8,000 miles on it, which is quite low for one of these. How many hours is it featuring? Come on, where's my hour meter? Huh, doesn't even have a... Does it not have one? Who knows, but anyway, 8,000 miles is very low mileage for these. They tend to go up quite high because they're used on farms daily. I've seen them at 20, 30,000 miles. A couple of little obvious things to check on one of these if you're looking at it. If I can see the light, I'll just pause it while I look. Oh no, there it is. It looks quite clean, this one. Now I've got the side covers off. There's a bit of dirt, but nothing a pressure wash won't sort. It's really quite a clean machine. These oil pans down here, every single one will have some seepage. It's the most common fault. This one isn't bad at all. If there's oil pooled around the bottom there, then you're in trouble. As I say, every single one will leak a little bit, will weep. I've not seen one that doesn't. The only way you're going to find one that's not weeping is if you buy one off me, like that I've completely rebuilt. But that's fine, there's nothing to worry about. A bit if it was pooling around there, you'd need to worry, because to replace that you have to cut out the bottom cross member. So you get the oil pan off and replace it, which is a right nightmare. Alternator belts never get changed. This one's showing a bit of wear, so I'll probably replace that for the £10 it costs. Another common fault, very, very common in fact, is the seals around the drive axles. As you can see, this one's dry on that side and dry on that side. Fronts tend to suffer more than the rears. Let's have a look on this one, I haven't even looked yet. Looks nice and dry around that one. And nice and dry around that one. So yeah, what I'm going to do with it now, as I say, I can't really change any of the suspension until I get some cutting discs. I'll check the oil now. We've run it and make sure it's still at the correct level. This is your trans oil. A to W90 it takes. That's looking pretty fresh, but I'll probably change it anyway. I'm going to replace the CV belt because I want to drive this around a little bit because I've barely driven it, because these suffer from rod bearings if they're not looked after. So I always change the oil before I drive them at all. So we'll change that belt now. That really just requires the footwell being taken off. In fact, we might even get away without taking the footwell off, just to change the belt. And then it's just T30 Torx bits all the way around. So I'll be back when the cover's off and I'm about to change it. Okay people, well I think I've got a bit lucky. It's actually got a brand new belt in it. It's a Gates belt as well, so quite a good brand. Gates G-Force. Literally all that was wrong with it was that whoever put the belt on hadn't torqued this nut down properly, so it would come loose, and instead of spinning as one piece, the outer part of the primary clutch was spinning on its own. So literally all I've done is tighten that back up and all seems well. I don't know if it's going to affect the bolt slightly, because this edge of this nut is slightly worn. I've put it on the opposite way because obviously it was rattling against this primary clutch. But hopefully, worst case scenario, all I'm going to have to do is replace that nut. Best case scenario, do nothing at all other than just tighten it up. So I'm going to stick that back in, tighten it down, and then I'm going to take it a little bit of a ride, make sure it's cured the problem. I'm going to leave the belt cover off, even though that's a really bad idea. Don't do that. Just so I can see exactly what's happening. And then I'll be putting it back together. I'm going to leave the front footwell off because inevitably we're going to need to check that the glow plugs are operating, which will require taking this front fender off. But I'm not going to take the front fender off until I've took the rack off, obviously, and they're going to sandblast in Monday, so they can stay on until then. So yeah, the next clip you'll see, we'll be actually driving it about. Okay, well here we go, here's the first ride. As I say, I'm doing this to see how the clutcher is working, but do not do this at home, this is a very bad idea. I'm keeping my foot on the secondary passenger rail. So here we go. That's instantly much better. It would rev and rev before it would take off previously. Speedo works. It's in kilometres an hour, which I'll have to change that back. She feels like she's not had the common modification of making the throttle go further than it should. That's what leads to a lot of them having rod bearing issues, so that's good. It feels about as quick as it should be, not quicker. Sounds pretty sweet, bloody hell. You can feel that the suspension needs doing. It's very pulley and sloppy, but we'll be doing that in the next episode. You probably won't hear on film, but you can hear the ball joints knock. The belt is not working to its best ability. It's probably a bit worn now, I think, even though it looks fairly new. It's a bit slow. No noticeable smoke, which is good. Belt's fully extended, as you can see. Alright, I'll see if I can change that back to miles an hour and you have a bit more of an idea. Okay, well we're back in miles an hour now, which means it's actually got a lot lower mileage than I thought. Only 5,000 miles on it. That's amazing. So let's get going again. These should top out around 35. So this one's definitely a bit slow. Not too bad though. Engine braking works well. Ugh. Right, so that's going to be the end of this little video. There'll be another one doing all the suspension, etc. I'm sorry if that was unwatchable, but obviously I'm trying to film on my phone and drive it at the same time. So yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.